We started out in January with people making resolutions for what they would do to support the cause of peace, harmony, and inclusion all around the world. Now, of course, we're several months into our service to create peace, and we have an exciting program for all of you today. Please make sure that you've got your name correct on your video identification. We like to be able to call people by name, and especially when we're in the breakout rooms that we have planned for later on today. There are approximately 20 people who work with me behind the scenes to make sure that all of this happens so that we can have this global conversation about promoting peace and harmony, diversity, and inclusion. This is not a conversation, if you're a first timer, this is not a conversation about military positions or governments. This is a conversation about what we as the people do to create societies where harmony is a value, where diversity and inclusion go hand in hand, and where we break down barriers in families, in our communities and neighborhoods, in our workplaces, where we break down the barriers to harmony and inclusion. And with that in mind, we decided that, well, there are so many wonderful projects that you're working on, and you've embraced working on diversity and inclusion, whether it's around gender, whether it's around age, ethnicity, culture, professions. There are so many things that you've done over the past months that we want you to be able to share in the breakout room. But this is April. And during April, all around the world, we embrace Earth Day. And we stop to think about our environment. So with that in mind, we're launching our discussion today with a conversation with my colleague, Andrea Stojkovski, who's joining us today from the Republic of North Macedonia. Good day, Andrea. Thank you for joining us.
Good day, Vice President Patti. Hello, Lions.
You know, we have we've known each other for a while, so I happen to know that you have a strong background both in environmental stewardship and in policy and government affairs. So I thought I might give you just, you know, that 60 seconds to tell us a bit about your background and why this is such a passion for you.
Everything that I do, I start from the notion of learning something from doing something. And this was 20 years ago when I started working for an environmental project in North Macedonia. And also the closest that it got me to practicing law. I was assisting a group of people from different institutions to draft the law on nature protection. And that's when I was interviewed for the job. I was asked, what do I know about nature protection? I answered simply that I know I love to enjoy nature, but I would also love to learn about it, and that's how it all started.
You know, if we roll time back in most of our westernized cultures, if we roll back 100, 150 years, certainly the environment was not shared equally among all peoples in the society. You know, the rich had grand parks and estates, and workers typically lived in ghettos and slums. And I think we've made some progress in that direction, where we realize this is one world, this is one earth. It belongs to us all. We're all responsible for it. And we hope that we can all share in the wonder of our environment together. So I want to start out with my first question, question number one. Why is it important to preserve or protect the environment?
Well, you said it yourself. We've started with protecting the environment or speaking about environment protection very late. It was all about using the resources that we had to achieve the development that we have now or we strive to achieve in the future for our countries or for our families. Be it speaking at the smallest community level or a family or a neighborhood or the country. Everybody was using everything that was at their disposal or at their reach, and some countries achieved more, some countries achieved less. It is part of the third generation of human rights when we speak about environmental protection, only because we got to that point in our mental development or educational development throughout the globe to understand that it's not about just using the resources that we have, but we also need to ensure that those resources are accessible or available for our successors. And this is where environment protection started. And also, it's not about just me or just you or any lion or any citizen of the world, because what we use and enjoy as environment affects others. And this is where we actually start speaking about responsibility of the rich towards the underdeveloped, let's not say poor, because it's always a question of different understanding. It's about the developed over the underdeveloped and the responsibility that we all share while living in this world. And in the end, it's the environment, it's the place where we all live in. If we don't protect it for us, we won't have it for us as well.
No, thank you. So right now, we're 150 years ahead of where I started us in the conversation. What is the most pressing environmental issue that you see right now?
There are plenty of things that people would focus, or environmental scientists, biologists, naturalists would say that are important. In my opinion, and probably in the opinion of every other citizen that's not an educated naturalist or biologist, we would say that climate change is the most pressing environmental issue at the moment. And it affects us all, whether we like to admit it or not, and whether we are developed or not that much developed, it affects us all. And as I said, maybe the neighbor is developed and I'm not, and I've not used my resources that much, but the pollution that goes and the effects of climate change are sensed regardless in which country you live.
Well, we certainly saw during the pandemic when people weren't traveling, airplanes weren't flying, people were working from home, that immediately we could see from satellite pictures that our human impact on our environment shifted radically. Now, of course, since then, people have gone back to work, people have begun to travel again. And so we continue to have an impact on our climate. And so as a Canadian myself, I look at our Arctic snowpack, I look at our mountain glaciers and water supply. And for me, one of the most critical issues, I believe, is our use of water, which we assume is a renewable resource, but which we see is not necessarily. Fresh water and salt water are certainly, of a fixed amount on our planet, but the amount that is in a reserve in fresh water seems to be diminishing, while our saltwater levels seem to be increasing and rising. So from my, layperson point of view, as much as I try to stay informed, I see our stewardship of how we use water, how we reclaim water, how we have best practices that don't pollute water. That to me seems to be foremost in my mind. Now, am I on track or am I off base?
Fully on track, because this is As we progress in our understanding of the environment that we live in, or as we progress in our understanding of the environmental science, we understand that there are specific issues that are of importance. Water and access to fresh water is one of the most pressing issues, apart from climate change as an issue in general, because the quantity of fresh water supply is, yes, limited. We can endanger it even further by the use of heavy industry or mining or whatever, and thus pollute the freshwater bodies that we have or we would use. To explain how development affects and our understanding of freshwater use, I would take you back again to when environment started to be a human right. It was at the third generation or in a later stage when we became aware of that of its importance. What we have at the moment is Slovenia, one of our alliance countries, well, a front runner when it comes to environmental protection throughout the globe, not just in Europe. Just proclaimed water as a human right. Access to fresh drinking water became a human right. And it's really important that we take care of all of the resources, but without water, there is no life. And this is what needs to guide us when we are designing our approach or developing laws and regulations with regards to environmental protection.
Well, thank you for highlighting that. Now, you mentioned that you're a member of a Lions Club, and many of our participants here are, or they belong to other neighborhood or community groups that are working on our global conversation about peace. But what are the benefits a Lions Club can have while protecting the environment? You know, why should you and your friends get together as a group to protect environment?
Apart from doing something for for our neighborhood or for the global for the world at the global scale, it's important to act in environment protection because it can also bring in new members. It can create new leaders in our community or in our clubs. We can see people who are educated or are experienced with environmental protection who can take us forward. And we can also grow as an association at the global scale by protecting the environment. For example, I learned through Lions a medical issue that the eye is the only bodily part that develops after birth in the first 5 years of life. I also learned through Lions that, for example, a white rose bush is very important for purifying the soil. It collects all the heavy metals from the soil. So planting white roses is an environmental activity that we could do and thus help soil cleaning from all the heavy metals that actually fall from the air because of air pollution. What is also good for us as Lions and how we can benefit is partnering with other institutions or with other organizations, with the state or with the local communities, with other activists, for example. Climate change we mentioned also early on. This is an issue that attracts and resonates extremely well with younger population. Just to remind all of our participants and particularly the Lions, the school strike for climate, the movement that Greta Thunberg, the Swedish girl, started. It attracted 6 million people overall throughout the globe, and most of them were young people. Just imagine the potential for the association and for our Lions clubs if we could partner with these young people into moving our clubs in the future by protecting the environment.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I was just recently in Ireland where we engaged with high school students to do work in parks, and we were doing tree planting. They had the previous month when it was the right time, you know, they'd done some flower planting. The young people were so excited to be out there. when we spoke with them and said, we're out here, we're standing in the pouring rain, we're doing our due diligence here in the park, it's so cold and rainy, I bet you wish you were doing something else. And they said, no, we're really happy to be here because this is our community. This is where we live, work, and play. And this is where we can have a hands-on impact. So, we're happy to join with your club to come out and to do this environmental work. And that's just one story. That's just one example. And I hope that in our breakout room later on, many of you will have other stories to share as well. You touched on the fact that environmental causes are really attractive to others in our community, and they can draw more people into our service group. How do you see this also having an impact on the development of future leaders?
Through a program that I think would also bring in new younger members and people who would like to stay with the association, but also take a group of our members and instruct them or help them develop particular knowledge when it comes to the environment. Our international president's priority for this year is to become a local advocate. And environment is one of our global causes. If we tie together environment and becoming a local advocate, we could certainly start a program called Environment and Climate Advocates or Activists that are Lions, but also non-Lions who would be invited to a constitutional area summer school where they can listen from the experience and knowledge from our Lions, share the passion about volunteering and serving the community, and improving their expertise and knowledge and tying them to Lions. They will have this program as a plus. It will go towards their educational credits. It can be recognized or accredited by an educational institution, but it will also tie them to the association because once they apply for the program and if they are admitted, they will then be obliged to stay at least a year with the Lions. And I know that Lions can be very much infectious. Once you start spending time with good Lions and enjoying that time well spent in fun and fellowship, you will certainly like to remain a member of that club. So this is a potential for us to tie membership with new people, leadership with improving their skills and preparing them to be leaders of our association, and also service, because once they are part of the association, they will continue to serve their community and the global community with the association as a whole.
Now, thank you so much. And thank you for giving us not only those primary reasons that we should be stewards of our environment, but all the secondary and tertiary benefits that we realize occur when we engage others in our community, young people, anyone, when we are inclusive in our environmental work in our community. So I'd like to pause here for a minute, and this is the participation stage. I know many of you have been working on your peace activities, but share with us now in the chat box some of the activities that you've seen or been involved with around the environment. Perhaps you've done planting of white roses. I didn't know that they were specifically such a great plant for cleansing heavy metals out of the soil. What an amazing thing to learn today. I often say that if I haven't learned something, my day's not over yet. So I see in our chat box that we've got tree planting. That's wonderful. Oh, clean up the parks in Amsterdam. Thank you, Arjun, for that. You've been cleaning up the river as well. Many people are involved in cleanup projects. Oh, here's one I like as well, beekeeping. I had the opportunity to meet with a group that were doing gardens. And as a volunteer service to their community, they were planting flowers. But they actually hadn't given any thought to which flowers they were planting. And so we talked about what they could do that would help sustain the pollinators in their local environment. Of course, for all of us around the world, that means different types of flowers to support different types of pollinators. But then if we can also, at the same time, think about what we're putting back into the soil. Oh, here we've got trees for an elementary school. Absolutely, shade trees are important, but fruit trees bring an added benefit, don't they? Making vegetable gardens. And someone else here, can any of our moderators call out some of these? Oh, here's somebody collecting plastic that is recycled. And there are companies in almost every country now that take that plastic and in turn will give you a park bench to install in your community. Oh, making the longest continuous path in Minnesota. Wow, 40 miles. And then we can all be a bit healthier when we get out on that path, cycling or walking or jogging. Restoring Native American pathway. Great idea. Thanks for sharing that. Now, if you've not been involved, I hope that one of these ideas will inspire you. We all share this one earth. And so each of us can act within our environment with care. I know that we've often tied our activities back to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I happen to be looking at the sustainable, let me say that again, Sustainable Development Goal around environment, clean water, access to healthy foods. There are just so many that are involved. But I came across one video that I'm hoping we can share with you. You might want to see this video. You might want to use this video. A picture truly is worth 1,000 words. And you might want to use that video, which is available on YouTube, in some of your work, in some of your inspirational sessions or celebration sessions, before or after you undertake your work in your community. Now, let's talk about what you are doing in your communities. We have a poll for each of you to participate in.
Okay, well, we spoke about the environment and environmental protection, and here are some areas that are, we believe, suitably described for lay people or for regular Lions to find themselves and be active in the future. The question reads, which one of the, with what area of environmental protection would you like to be involved in? And this is a single choice question. There are a number: climate change awareness, clean water provision, cleanup actions, tree planting, wildlife protection, and mind you, this can also be beekeeping, disaster preparedness, and other. Of course, if you choose other, please be so kind to write down in the chat box which other area would you like to be involved.
You're making it difficult when we can only choose one option here, Andrea, but yes, we do need to be focused on what we're doing. And in each of our communities, there will be different priorities, although everything's important. there will be different priorities at different times.
A smart man once told me, always focus at one step at a time. So let's start with one, and then maybe we can switch midterm. So let's see the results. As you can see, the highest percentage point goes to cleanup actions, which is 25% of all of our participants have spoken about cleanup actions. Then about tree planting, which was, of course, even a big one 11 years ago or 12 years ago with past President Dr. Tam. Then we have 16% for climate change awareness and clean water provision. We go to 13% with disaster preparedness, which is a step beyond what we are already providing with disaster relief and LCIF grants. And then we have 9% for wildlife protection. And the last 2% were more creative than we were when we were designing the poll with other.
You know, I see some great other in the chat box, like forest conservation, where in Uganda there's a rich biodiversity and its forests are home to several endangered species. So, you know, we all have a role to help protect, and that, you know, extends as well to how we are using land for agriculture, for forestry. I see in New Jersey, they had 2 possible tornadoes touch down just last night. Of course, cleanup and relief is called for, and we always have to be prepared, because we do live at the whim. We live on this planet very much at the whim of Mother Nature, and disasters do reoccur. Scientists have told us that in the last 15 years, storms have become more severe, and that has a lot to do with the fact that the air movement and the water cycle is impacted by increases in temperature around the world. So thank you so much for walking us through that poll. I can see that lots of people have lots of ideas on how to be good stewards of our environment, how to make sure that we have an environment, a community that will be there to help sustain us all. I'm going to ask Kim now for some instructions for the breakout room.
This is one of our favorite parts of GC Peace. We're going to give you 20 minutes to share how you plan to advance peace and understanding in your area in 2023. You'll each have 2 minutes to share your name, where you're from, and your initial plan. Then your fellow participants in the breakout room will be able to provide some feedback. Each room will have a moderator to help you keep you on track. With that, we'll open the rooms, and please make sure someone records the fabulous ideas that you're about to share.
Come back. Now there are many things that are going to happen in the next few minutes. One is we invite you to share your exciting project or your exciting new idea in the chat box. Secondly, I would like for our guest panelist and regular Andrea to unmute himself. I know that you were very helpful to us in providing the permission to use the SDG booklet that was shared with all of our registrants. Can you tell us a bit more about that, Andrea?
Yes, thanks, Vice President Patti. This is really an extraordinary effort that a team of German lions from MD 111, Germany, did. The author of this booklet is Dr. Jochen Schreiner, an environmentalist, a specialist, who actually went through the Sustainable Development Goals and wrote in explanations, even gave advice on what lions can do in order to help their countries or their communities achieve Sustainable Development Goals. And a huge thank you to Dr. Schreiner and his team in Germany for allowing us to use the booklet.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And I know that some of you will want to be able to share those forward. Please do. They're no good to us if we leave them sitting on a shelf or in a desk drawer. So we said, I think it was 16% of you wanted to be engaged in education and awareness when we did the poll earlier. And so this is certainly the type of tool that we can use and put into the hands of others. Now, in the chat box, we have so many of you sharing your ideas about what was the highlight from your breakout room discussion. But I'd like to turn it over now to Kim Stewart, who will invite some of our moderators to give a quick synopsis of a few of the breakout room discussions.
Hi, so I'm going to call on 3 lions just to report back on the breakout rooms, just a quick synopsis of a couple ideas that were shared. I'm going to start in South Africa and go to Gayla. Gayla, will you unmute?
Right, there we go. Yes, we had an interesting discussion. What I found very interesting was one of our participants who was from India. They've created a session that they do in the evenings as part of RLLI to encourage people to understand what climate change is and to advocate in the States. Was that Canada? Oh, I forget now. Are working with a number of other organizations, the Fish and Game Park, Rotary, and schools to be able to plant as many trees as possible. One club is first time doing peace poster, which is wonderful, and trying to focus on peace and looking at trying to prevent the gun violence. And then again from India, the huge project that they've just done under third VP there with e-waste, which is quite amazing, and I think we can all learn from that. And then in Italy, they're planting trees and then trees burnt in a valley. They're repopulating that and around schools. And then in South Africa, well, we're doing a lot because we have a lot of problems that require a more peaceful situation. With our history of apartheid, it's having conversations with each other that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but we learn more about each other. And then all the beach cleanups, we have a population that doesn't believe in recycling. So that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayla. Thank you for that synopsis of your breakout room. We're now going to go to Serbia with one of our newest moderators. Vakasan, can you unmute and share what happened in your room?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to share all the things we actually talked about. I had a great opportunity to meet people with the same mindset, I would say, that we all share. The majority of actions taken for a cleaner planet and better environment for all of us were including mostly bottles collection, planting trees, working with schools and kindergartens, as well as implementation of whole projects for cleaner waters, which is one of the most important things, obviously, because without water, we can't deal with any other of 17 sustainable development goals. So that's very important for us and the local communities as well.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much.
And lastly, we're going to go to Joanne Ogden in Canada. Can you unmute, Joanne?
It says that the host is not allowing me to unmute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, we had a very active group participating from all about the globe. But one of the highlights, I do believe, was making sure that we show what we say as opposed to just talking about it. So even some of the small things, so our kids see, picking up cigarette butts, picking up garbage on the beach, not using, styrofoam coffee cups or plastic bottles, making sure we're using reusable bottles and stuff like that. I just recounted a story. We were doing a conversation. I had a small child alongside with me, and someone threw out their cigarette butt, and she just looked up and said, "Pick up your junk." And I think, our kids are watching, and I think it's very, very important to know that and mirror what we need to do to keep our environment clean.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Those were wonderful insights, and we should all be mindful that our children are watching, and we need to protect the planet for them. Thank you, and back to Patti.
Thank you so much for the sharing, and the sharing in the chat box has been wonderful as well. I want to remind you that you can save the chat box using the extended menu at the bottom of the chat box for most of you, and capture those wonderful ideas that have been brought to you from all around the world. Thank you for being with us despite the time zones and the challenges. Thank you for making time to share your inspiring stories and to participate in the stories that we bring to you. As we move forward in the next few months, we know that to move any of these concerns or projects or discussions, the conversations forward, it involves bringing others on the journey with us. We have all reached out to community members and friends and invited them to join in our projects that promote peace, harmony, and inclusion. And we know that we can also take steps forward by telling our elected officials that these priorities need to be their priorities. Similarly, we can lobby for environmentally sound practices by local companies. And this includes their responsible waste management or environmental restoration efforts, as well as their efforts to be diverse and inclusive in their policies, practices, and employment. So there's so many things we can do. Now, we focused on environment for today, but as we go forward, the need that is foremost in your community may involve another aspect of building peace and understanding. So please continue your efforts to ensure peace, harmony, and inclusion over the course of the next few months. And we will rendezvous back here on August 27th for our next global conversation about peace. Now, perhaps we can close out our session with one final video. Is that video ready for sharing? Thank you so much to the tech team, because it's true. We all need peace. Feel free to sing along.
So we can fill the world with hope. We all need hope. So we can build a lasting peace. We all need peace to keep our dreams alive. We all need peace to make our planet thrive. We need to sing so that the world can hear our song. We need a song so that the world can sing along. Our song will spread its message loud and clear. Our song will spread to be
I can see some of you aren't singing.
Strong We all need love. We all need hope. We all need
Thank you so much for your commitment to our world, to building stronger, more inclusive and peaceful societies everywhere. Thank you for making peace a priority, one life, one family, one community at a time. Go forth in peace.